Representative Clemmer, you recognized to speak for the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's never really fun to go to the well to argue against people that are sincere in their beliefs as you are sincere in your beliefs. I want to speak in favor of this bill, but before I get to some of the specifics, I think we need to be especially mindful not to impugn the intent of legislation, not to assume we know what legislation is about, and to assume that elected representatives of this state come before you today to keep people from voting. It is horrifying to me that anyone in this room believes that about me or anyone else. I didn't stand before you joyfully carrying on, duty-bound carrying on the bill the controversial bill I brought to you before. But I did not accuse anyone in this body of wanting to kill babies. I didn't do that. You know I didn't. I was respectful of your beliefs. But you tell us today that we don't want people to vote, and you accuse people of my party. Our party is the party of voting rights. Our party is, and Representative Walker acknowledged this in committee, we are the party of the 15th Amendment. But we have also in the Delta been the party that hasn't been allowed in the polling places. We have had very poorly run elections in this state. And the point has often come to keep Republicans from being in the voting place, from having primaries in public buildings. I can cite the date and the time and the phone call where we were told we were not allowed to have a Republican primary. So we can argue this bill, but please don't say that we don't want people to go to vote. I will pledge to find anyone in the state. I may not personally do it, but I will find them a ride if they need a ride. If they need help tracking down a document at the Department of Vital Records, I will pledge today to help anyone who needs that help. I may not do it myself, but we will find somebody to do that. Let me say this about the proof of voter fraud. First of all, let's be clear. There's election fraud, which is a whole big topic, from counting the ballots, from tearing up ballots. And this bill isn't, and problems with absentee voting, this bill isn't going to address that. That is only going to be addressed when we get voters educated, when we get poll workers educated. But let's talk about vote fraud. Everyone says there's not much proof. If you check the law, the only time you can challenge a vote is between the time the voter calls out their name and signs their name on the voting register. That is the only time a vote can be challenged. That's about 30 seconds maybe in my polling place. And let me tell you something else, if you don't know, if you weren't in committee, only a poll watcher can challenge a vote. A poll worker, if they know you're not who you say, if your signature doesn't match, I contend to you there's no place in the law that poll worker can challenge your vote, that you are who you say you are. We do have instances. I think our county is pretty well run, but my county clerk came to me and said, last November, we had somebody that came to vote, and they said, you've already voted. You voted early. Well, they hadn't. They checked the signatures, checked the ID, and sure enough, somebody else had voted for him. How does that happen unless there is vote fraud? But I can tell you, we don't know how many people, and maybe it's not. Maybe it's 1%. Maybe it will never make the difference in an election. But we had better guard our ballot boxes. We want to encourage voters, but we need to guard the sanctity of the ballot box by assuring that we know the person is who they say you are. We have IDs required to stay in a shelter when it's below freezing temperatures. IDs required. Heard it on the radio. Come down to the Salvation Army. Be sure you have your ID to stay in a shelter. To go to DHS, you need your ID. To buy cigarettes, to buy alcohol. We need to get IDs out there for folks that need IDs. I think this bill helps to get those IDs in people's hands, maybe alleviating other problems they have. I ask you for a good vote on this bill. Thank you.
Representative Clemmer spoken for the bill.